"Bionicle is my childhood," said every kid growing up in the 2000s. I mean, we've all seen these guys in some form since they debuted in the 2000s, and they have left a massive impact since their debut. During a time when Lego was struggling financially, they released a line of buildable action figures called Bionicle, which you assembled yourself. These toys are just awesome. Not only could you collect the Bionicles, but you could also create your own heroes from the toys, combining different parts together to make something out of your imagination. Along with these toys, there was a story to build interest around them. The one who created the story of the Bionicles through the books that I read all the time as a kid was Greg Farshtey, who also wrote many Ninjago comics and other books. He is also the one responsible for the world building and lore that makes Bionicle so good. Bionicle itself was created by Christian Faber, who came up with the initial ideas of the Toa on an island. And man, did they go above and beyond. The lore of Bionicle is so expansive, with deep history and lore revolving around these Lego toys. It's so amazing. I'm not even kidding around. They rival Transformers with the deep lore and history. So with the success of the toys and books comes movies, which Lego wanted to make. The project was first proposed in 2001 during the original run of the Bionicle Toyline. Lego got offers from many different studios, but decided to develop the movie themselves to keep creative control, which I can respect. Production began in 2002 and was released in 2003 on home video, and it was pretty darn good for a first-time animated movie. But how does the movie fare 22 years later? Yeah, I'm making you feel old with this one. We are going to look at this movie today, and with that, I am Rocko from Reamlore, and let's dig into Bionicle: The Mask of Light. Also, consider liking and subscribing if you enjoyed the video. We open with narration from Taraga Vakama, played by Christopher Gaze, telling us about the way of the Bionicle. All of this is backed by temple blocks representing the characters in the story, and I'm just gonna read it to you worse than Chris because I don't have a buttery voice like him. "In the time before time, the Great Spirit descended from the heavens, carrying we, the ones called the Matoran, to this paradise. We were separate without purpose, so the Great Spirit illuminated us with the three virtues: unity, duty, and destiny. We embraced these great gifts, and in gratitude we named our island home Matanui, after the Great Spirit himself. But our happiness was not to last, for Matanui's brother, the Makuta, was jealous of these honors and betrayed him, casting a spell on Matanui, who fell into a deep slumber. The Makuta was free to unleash his shadows, and unleash them he did." Well, that's a flip on the classic great evil was sealed away but is coming back now. Evil showed up, defeated good, and now is going to run wild. Also, the Makuta here in the temple block form looks incredibly terrifying with the black and red smoke. We truly open with a voice burned into everyone's memories: "Takua!" Yes, this is Jala, played by Andrew Francis, calling out for his friend Takua, which he does a lot. And to be honest, it never really bothered me that much as a kid, but others have told me it haunts their dreams. We then do see Takua, played by Jason Mikas, with his pet crab Puku, hoping to get across a lava lake to get a stone. The reason he's doing this is because he is a chronicler, always looking for more stories to write about. Jolly yells at Takua saying that they need to be preparing for the Koli match, but Takua wants to grab the stone. After he does, the entire cavern starts to collapse, causing the stone to fall in the lava, when it popped back up as a golden mask, shining light onto Takua. These masks are used by the Toa to give them superpowers, although at this point in the series they had acquired the last of their masks, so there shouldn't be any more. This is something to note: this movie actually takes place during the story of the Toa of this generation, not the beginning. Seems strange, but that's just where the toys were at. Takua pulls the mask out of the lava when suddenly a big wave of lava charges at him. He throws the mask to Jala, but as he does, the mask stops glowing. Takua's bright idea to escape the lava wave is to surf it on his shield, but it is basically like a wakeboard to a monster wave. This is when Toa Tahu of Fire shows up. It's so awesome, and he rides the wave off of a lava fall. Scott McNeil is playing Tahu, the Toa of Fire, as well as voicing Onua, Toa of Earth. He has also voiced a bunch of other characters from Transformers Beast Wars, fun fact for you. Just before they fall, however, Tahu jabs his swords into the rocks to stop their fall and protects them with his energy shield. They reunite with Jala, and Tahu gets a look at the mask they found. He says take it to Taraga Vakama after they've won the Koli match. Priorities. We then meet Taraga Vakama, who is announcing to the stadium about how great the Toa of the Six Elements are, and basically giving a prayer to the Great Spirit. He is also joined by not only the Taragas of Water and Rock, but also Toas Gali and Pohatu. Kathleen Barr plays Gali, Toa of Water, and Trevor Duvall plays Pohatu, Toa of Stone. I should note that the Taragas are basically the elders, while the Toa are the protectors. It's clear that Tahu and Gali don't like each other that much, you know, fire and water, and they're betting their team will win the game. Turaga Vakama dedicates the field to the Great Spirit and his virtues. Spoilers, Matanui is actually a giant robot, and to be honest, I am all for a religion that worships a giant robot as God. All hail the Great Spirit. The Coley match starts with the two members of the Rock, Fire, and Water tribes in the match. The game is basically like field hockey, where they fight over a ball with these sticks and try to get the ball into the other team's goals. One member on the field, the other member being the goalie. And other than that, I'm pretty sure anything goes in this game. By the way, yes, this is way better than Quidditch, although to be honest, it's not a high bar. The game goes up until nightfall. Takua tries out his new move to win the match, like a flip into the air to score, but it doesn't work and he almost kills the elders. Because of that, the Water Tribe were able to pick up the win. One member of the Water Tribe, Holly, played by Chiarazani, was also flirting with Jala during the match, so that's something, not a total loss, Jala. During the bow, the Mask of Light drops out of Jala's bag and falls in front of Takua, which shines on him. Takua tries to get rid of it though and tilts it to shine on Jala. Later, Turaga Nakama, played by Leslie Ewan, is reading the inscription on the mask and determines that it is in fact the Great Mask of Light. You spent an hour reading it and all you came up with is, it's light? Hey, this is a bottle here. I should read the inscription to see if it's the bottle of water. I kid, of course, because the bigger bombshell here is that the mask will be worn by the 7th Toa, the Toa of Light. Legends say there will be a 7th Toa who will bring light to Matanui. Tahu says they should prepare for his arrival, but the Turaga says he won't just appear like the other Toa did, he must be found. The Mask of Light chose who will deliver it, and everybody thinks that because the light was on Jala, that Jala must deliver the mask, even though Jala knows it was shining on Takua. Takua knows this too, but doesn't want the responsibility, so he pawns it off on Jala. Jala has no choice and takes the mask, but also volunteers Takua to chronicle for him. Tahu, meanwhile, questions why the 7th Toa is showing up now when at this point in the story, all of the Makuta's forces have been defeated. Gali goes to meditate, or nap, I can't really tell, but she notices there is a 7th star in the sky, the ones representing the Toa. We then meet the Makuta, and my Matanui is he creepy. Lee Talker playing the Makuta, giving this creepy monster a creepy voice. He speaks in a low, slow voice as he talks about the 7th Toa's arrival. He then just pulls a snake out of the ground, saying he must keep his brother asleep while he unleashes his monsters, the Rakshi. I cannot begin to convey how creepy he is. You just have to see this for yourself. I also love how he looks, just a Frankensteining of many different Bionicles fused together. Jala and Takua are about to leave as Turaga Vakama and Holly see them off. They ride on top of Puku while Vakama says, "Don't tomfool around, this is important, you idiots," and tells them the mask will lead the way as it shines in the direction they need to go. Gali, meanwhile, is woken up from her nap or meditation when the Rakshi pop out of the ground to attack her. I love the design and aesthetic of these guys, monsters with a hunchback and a weird snake head. And this is where we have to mention the fight scenes in the movie. Mainly that they're non-existent. Apparently, Lego were afraid kids watching this would emulate the violence, so it's just a lot of Dragon Ball Z energy blasts, shields, and running away. It's okay, but it's not good either. I mean, for Matanui's sake, the Toa literally have swords. Let them use them. The Rakshi force Gali into the water, which fooled them into thinking she's dead before moving on to the lava village. Gali is able to swim faster than they could fly somehow, and alerts everyone to sound the alarm and lock down the village. It doesn't work as the Rakshi blast Tahu, knock Gali back and break through the walls to terrorize the Matoran. The Toa regroup and start evacuating the Matoran and Turaga. Tahu tries to fight, but his energy beams are not enough to stop the monsters as the poison one gets him pinned down. Gali tries to help but accidentally blasts Tahu, who got a poison scratch on his mask. Tahu manages to surf Gali out of the village as they and the Matoran watch as the village sinks into lava. Yeah, why did you build your village on top of lava? Tahu wonders why they didn't just kill everyone. They were definitely strong enough, but Vakama says they were seekers and they didn't find what they were looking for, the Mask of Light. Tahu wants to find Jala and Takua to help ensure their safety, but Gali says they should summon the other Toa for help, which he reluctantly agrees to with a greened poison eye. Takua and Jala, meanwhile, are traveling through a forest, which Takua is not a big fan of. This sparks a conversation about what Takua's story is, since he's always looking for other stories, which he responds with he doesn't have a story, but Jala disagrees, saying we all have a destiny. This is when they are attacked by a robot bear. Jala tries to take him out but is unsuccessful. This is when vines shoot out and grab the bear. It was Toa Liwa, the spirit of air played by Dale Wilson. Jala pulls out a knife, but Liwa says there's no need since the bear was protecting his home and lets down the creature. He offers his help in the weirdest speech pattern ever. He legit says, and I'm just gonna read this to you, "If Toa Liwa helped on your search, may he be a spirit lift. Walk? Ha! No, never. If you ride with me, there'll be no foot walking, just air flying. Not exaggerating, that is word for word what he says, and we never learn why he talks like that. Lewa then summons a weird giant bird and they fly off but have to leave Puku behind and tell her to go home. That's kinda mean, but I think it's because they know it'll be dangerous. They reach the top of the icy mountains, but Lewa hears the drums echoing throughout the land, hearing that their village was destroyed by the Rokshi, the Makuda's sons. I am all for a communication system based on drums, by the way. Who needs email? Jala wants to go back, but Lewa says it's too late and the mask needs Jala. Jala protests, saying Takua should continue, but he is still refusing the mask. Lewa says it doesn't matter whose duty it is because we all have a duty to help each other. He has to leave to go to Jala's village and warn the other Toa and flies off. Jala and Takua continue on, but they run into some frozen monsters and meet Kopaka, the Toa of Ice, played by Michael Dobson, who has a cool Terminator eye. He's kind of the isolated Toa, feeling better when he's on his own freezing monsters and hasn't really heard of their mission. Tahu is also mourning the loss of his home. Tahu, maybe next time don't put your village on top of lava. That was a very big design flaw. He also snaps at Gali when she shows concern for a scratch when his village is gone, that he wasn't strong enough to defend it. Lewa, who arrives, says they must work together to stop the Rokshi, but Tahu just walks away from them. Back with Kopaka, he leads Jala and Takua to his village when suddenly they are attacked by the same Rokshi from before. He drops his shield and tells them to snowboard away, and he falls close behind with his sword/skis. The Rokshi blast Kopaka, knocking him out as Takua realizes they are after the mask, so he takes it and the shield into the icy river and tries to lure out the Rokshi. As the Rokshi recover, they are about to grab Takua, but Kopaka returns and freezes them in the river. I guess that's why he hangs around here. Freezing people is super easy. This is when Puku shows up, having walked through the jungle, and Kopaka walks off, wanting to check on his own village. Jala and Takua walk through the tunnel, but Takua breaks off when he saw some glowing plants, and this is when the Makuda calls out his name. And you all thought Jala calling out Takua would haunt your dreams. Makuda can talk through shadows. He knows Takua is afraid he won't find the 7th Toa, and that Jala will die because of him. Makuda says bring the mask to him and Jala will be spared, but Takua can't do it. Takua reunites with Jala and Puku and says he can't go on anymore. Jala is mad because this is Takua's duty he pawned off on him, but Takua is too afraid and ashamed to explain why. Jala says he won't give up though, that he will find the 7th Toa whether Takua is the herald or not. Makua is mad that Takua turned him down and that his sons are stuck in ice. So he creates some more and says he will use fear to turn the Toa against each other and stop the Matoran from awakening his brother. We see that Pohatu, the Toa of Stone, is meeting up with Onua, Toa of Earth. Seriously, they're like the same thing. Couldn't they have named one like the Toa of Lightning or the Toa of Nature? Why do you need 2 that are rock? These 2 are a couple of pros though, and Pohatu has news for the entire village, that the Mask of Light has been found, and that Jala and Takua are searching for the 7th Toa. This is when Takua shows up but is too ashamed to admit he abandoned his friend and says they got separated after they ran into the Rokshi. And this is when the new Rokshi show up to fight. Onua and Pohatu try to fight as the Matoran flee, but these Rokshi are too much for them with their evil powers. Takua looks back ashamed of what he's done, and with determination he rides Puku to fight the Rokshi. And as it turns out, the Rokshi are only after him, not the mask. Tahu then shows up, and how did he get here so fast? Well, I guess the Toa are the only people here with long legs. They do have a problem though, as the poison has finally reached Tahu's brain and he goes crazy and starts felling his fellow Toa who came to help. Takua has Puku scale the walls of the escape tunnel to get away from the Rokshi, but the monsters climb up after him. Fortunately, they are stopped by Onua and Pohatu dropping rocks on them. As they brofist though, Pohatu asks the question of how Onua was able to stop the ceiling from falling on them, which is when the ceiling fell on them. Tahu is also stopped by Kopaka, who returned to freeze Tahu, and he along with Lewa and Gali take him to safety. Takua also managing to escape and go find Jala. I just want to mention something real quick. If we're going over who has the best underrated animation studio, it has to go to Lego. Just look at any film or video game or animation they have done in the past, and it always looks amazing. You'll especially see that when we look at the next Bionicle movie. It's like watching an art piece. The Toa tie Tahu up, and by using all of their healing powers that they have, they get rid of the poison. This has affected Gali though, and asked Kopaka if they really are divided, but he left already, so that's a yes, Gali. I'm only kidding, we see why he left later, plus Tahu wakes up and thanks Gali for saving his life. Jala meanwhile is scaling a mountain and is about to fall when Takua and Puku show up to help him. They make up and continue the journey, Takua telling Jala that the Rakshi were after the herald, not the mask. They make it to the Great Temple, and while Takua is holding the mask, it shoots a beam of light at the temple. Just then, the new Rakshi show up to attack. This is when Takua also accepts that the mask shows him and that he is the herald, and that they need to run away right now. Just as they try to run though, the old Rakshi show up to cut them off. Just when they try to attack though, Tahu, Gali, and Liwa show up to defend them. They're not alone though, as Kopaka, Onua, and Pohatu pop out of the ground. Turns out that Kopaka went to dig them out of the tunnels and brought them here. And once again they fight. I've already mentioned this, they don't really fight, they just blast beams at each other and use force fields. But it's cool to see all 6 Toa together for the first time in the film, mixing and combining their powers to take out the Rakshi one by one. They manage to seal all but one of them in the glass/ice prisons. The one Rakshi in question attacks Takua and Jala and uses its powers to get the Makuta in his head again, but just as the Rakshi is about to kill Takua, Jala sacrifices himself. Jala says this was always his duty, to help Takua find his own story. This is where I have to note that throughout this whole movie, even though every other person's mask fit perfectly on their faces, Takua's always seemed off, like it didn't fit. Or rather that he was always meant to have a different one. The coolest moment in the movie happens when Takua puts on the Mask of Light, which transforms him into Takanuva, the Toa of Light. He easily takes out the last Rakshi and reveals his old mask underneath the temple statue. He takes his fallen friend home as the Makuta says all of this is about to end. While looking at Jala's mask, he wonders why his friend needed to die so he could figure out who he was. Fakama asks why he's looking for answers. The reason he went on that trip in the end was to figure out what his heart wanted, what his duty is. Takanuva swears that his friend's sacrifice will not be in vain, and his fellow Toa build him a motorcycle. Now those are some real brothers right there. Takanuva puts the snake that was in the Rakshi's head into the bike because it would return directly to him, when Holly shows up with Jala's mask and puts it on the front of his bike. Is that insensitive? Her justification is since Jala led him in the past, he will lead him more as his bike. What? The other Toa want to go as well to fight the Makuta, but Takanuva says his destiny is to defeat the Makuta, while theirs has always been to defend the people of this island, and that they need to gather everyone here. Takanuva goes into the depths of the underground pod racer style until he crashes into a wall. Holly then pops out of the bike with Jala's mask saying it's time someone was his chronicler. He agrees, but only if she stays in the back. He enters the Makuta's chamber and says he can no longer hide in shadow. Makuta says that he should run off like always, but Takanuva is done running and Matanui will be awakened today. He tells Holly to get everyone else and bring them down here. This is when we finally get a good look at the Makuta, and he is freaking huge. He's like 15 feet tall, he's so big. Now what does he do now that he has arrived with his mace, ready to finally vanquish his arch rival? Guess what happens next. Time's up, because there's no way you could have guessed what happens. The Makuta, the devil himself in this world's ideology, challenges Takanuva to a Koli match. Are you serious? If he wins, he gets the Mask of Light, and if Takanuva wins, he can try and free Matanui. Imagine that was the finale of any other movie. Imagine instead of the awesome climactic fight between Puss in Boots and Death, they just played ping pong. This is the absolute worst of the we can't show fights or violence nonsense. Now you could argue Makuta is just toying with him, given even if he wins, Takanuva can't wake up Matanui on his own, and he knows for a fact that Takanuva can't beat him in a fight, but still, it's ridiculous. It doesn't ruin the tension or make Makuta less threatening, he still is, trust me, but it is just so bizarre. I mean, maybe Makuta was just bored because he's been stuck working at home. While this whole thing is strange, it is a nice callback to the start of the film, and how Takanuva failed to win the game initially. Holly returns to the crowd of people and say that they are waking Matanui and that they must go, but one of the Turaga says if they go down there, they may never return. Holly says that while this island is a paradise and she loves her home, they owe it to Jala to awaken the Great Spirit. All hail Matanui. Back with the Koli match, Makuta just forgot about the rules and starts hurling silver balls at Takanuva. You're supposed to get the ball in the goal, man. You recommended this game. How do you not know the rules? This is when the people of Matanui show up and Takanuva says they will triumph, but Makuta says he will not let any of them return and seals the tunnel. Takanuva finally pulls off the spinning move he tried at the start of the movie and gets a direct hit onto Makuta, but he gets right back up while saying he does this to protect his brother. Sleep spares him pain, awake he suffers. Takanuva says he's not protecting his brother before he grabs him, takes off the Makuta's mask, and they both fall into the pool of water. What crawls out of it though is straight up an abomination of Matanui. They somehow fuse together to form this new being. Takakuta Makanuva, it doesn't matter. Merging with the Mask of Light showed Makuta that his brother must be awakened. He lifts up the chamber to his brother's room and lets everyone go inside. He stops Holly though and somehow brings Jala back from the dead. Since when can either of them do that? I mean, I guess since Matanui created everyone because he's God, Makuta has a similar power, but it comes out of nowhere. Makuta is out of strength though, and the door crushes him, the Mask of Life being all that's left of either of them. Vakama then takes the mask and uses Jala, Holly, and the Mask of Light to wake up Matanui, which also revives Takanuva. Why did you even have him die there if you were going to bring him back instantly? Jala, I kind of understand since this is watched by kids and we need a happy ending, but why didn't you just have Takanuva defeat Makuta and they all go in the chamber? Anyways, the best friends reunite, they look out in the sky, and the Mask of Light points them towards Metro Nui, Vakama's old home, setting up the sequel/prequel. Now those of you watching are probably scratching your head asking if they awakened Matanui or not, and yes, they did. The Bionicle lore is kind of fuzzy at this point since there are only some books and a game depicting events between Mask of Light and the final film Legends of Bionicle, but apparently Matanui is a giant robot under the island and he woke up, destroying the landscape while being the new home for them. But don't take my word for it, I really don't know the lore super well. So what are the ratings for this? How do my rankings work? Well, there are 4 criteria for my ratings. First is characterization. How characters are depicted factors greatly into the ratings. If they are clearly defined and showcased, then they rank higher. Second is story. How the story progresses from start to finish factors into the ratings. If it's dynamic and interesting, it gets a high score. If it's plotting and boring, it gets a low score. Third is entertainment. How fun something is plays a big part. If you're not enjoying what you're watching, there's no point in viewing. Fourth is importance. How necessary is it for you to watch? In our new world of streaming and rewatching, there's too much to watch. If something is noteworthy, it gets a high score. If it's something you can live with missing, it gets a low score. They will be judged in 5s, 5 being the best and 0 being the worst. However, on certain occasions, if I think something is truly noteworthy, I will go above or below certain parameters. If I think something is exceptionally good, I will give it a 6 or higher. If I think something is exceptionally horrendous, I will go lower than 0. Characterization can get a 4. Everybody is characterized very well. The Toa show off how well their personalities bounce off each other even with the few screen time they have. And Jala and Takua are great together. The story is also a 5. The journey to find the 7th Toa just to find out Takua was the Toa himself is great. I just love the whole journey setup anyway. Entertainment gets a 5. It is so entertaining despite not having any real fight scenes. It is still fun to see them bounce off each other and fight each other with the beams and stuff. Importance also gets a 5. It is the first movie in the 4-part series, so it's important to see this, and it's the first Bionicle movie. You kind of have to. With all that said and done, I'd say this is a pretty good movie. Obviously the films got better and better from here, but this is a solid start. The visuals are good, the story and characters are engaging, and it's just a fun time. It's not perfect, as while the Toa are cool in this, we don't spend much time with them and they don't get much development. But the story isn't really about them, it's about Takua and Jala. Yes, this movie is cheap in some areas, but who cares, the visuals are still stunning. I will say the absence of fights really hurts the film, making some things awkward, and the ending is a bit strange, but all in all, it's a good flick. I also want to say what makes this really good. It doesn't talk down to kids watching. I feel like a lot of media, especially nowadays, that are made for kids, dumb things down or don't let them figure out things on their own, which I really don't like. Kids are a lot smarter than cartoon companies give them credit for. They are able to fully understand a full range of emotions. Bionicle has a respected lore, likable characters, and has a unique atmosphere and style which doesn't dumb down things for kids. And as I said before, the 3 sequels that follow this get even better as they go along. For movies that were just made to sell more toys, they went above and beyond to tell a great story, and I think that's really what Bionicle's legacy is going to be. Bionicle continues to be iconic. Last time we went over the first Bionicle movie, Bionicle the Mask of Light. In that we saw the adventures of Takua and the other Toa fighting against the Makuta. It was a good film, not perfect as there were multiple things that could have been improved, but the sequel did just that. Created in 2004, the sequel Bionicle Legends of Metro Nui came out quickly after the first movie's success, and in my opinion, it was an improvement big time. Don't get me wrong, I like the first one, but the visual, story, and the characterization are all upped in this one. And really, this movie isn't continuing the story, but looking back. Remember the old guys from the first movie? This movie is about them when they were Toa defending the metropolis that was Metro Nui. Yeah, the Toyline for some reason went back to tell the story about these Toa. With all that said, how does this film hold up? I'm Rocko from Reamlore, and let's dive in. By the way, if you enjoyed this video, make sure to like and subscribe because we upload videos just like this one on our Reamlore channel. We start off with narration from Turaga Vakama from the last movie. Using temple blocks, he tells us about the time before time. The story now is they thought the Toa would protect them, but they all fell because of the Makuta, who wanted to take over the world. We open with one Toa grabbing some artifacts from a temple when some bad guys arrive, saying he's the last Toa. Our Toa is Toa Lee Khan, played by Michael Dobson, and while he doesn't get much screen time, I do enjoy his war veteran character. Hunting him are the evil Dark Hunters Kreka, also played by Michael Dobson, and Nadiki, played by Paul Dobson. They're both kinda generic evil, but they're fun enough with cool designs. Lee Khan managed to get away and we see all the different locales in Metro Nui. Yeah, we've definitely left the island backdrops as we focus on the big, spectacular cities. And this movie is gorgeous. I'm not kidding, the jaw-dropping backgrounds are incredible and show how vast this universe is. Lee Khan starts delivering the artifacts to the Matoran while visiting the various cities. The last person Lee Khan is visiting is Vakama as a Matorian, now played by Alessandro Giulani. Vakama is one of the best mask makers working on his magnum opus but finding difficulty since he doesn't have the right disc. Lee Khan arrives and tells Vakama the other Toa are gone and he needs his help. Lee Khan gives Vakama the artifact as the Dark Hunters arrive. We also learn an interesting fact about Nadiki and that he was once a Toa alongside Lee Khan, and it's never expanded upon. I know this story isn't about Lee Khan and his team, but I would have liked a little more development with their rivalry to give them both a little bit more character. They get into a fight, or not really since it is once again avoiding lasers. Yeah, Lego was clearly afraid of kids emulating the violence, which sucks. The fight ends pretty quickly as Nadiki threatens to kill Vakama, forcing Lee Khan to surrender. Nadiki drops Vakama anyway, but Lee Khan saves him by tossing him his surfboard swords. I love that that's a thing now. As Vakama escapes, he gets a vision of Lee Khan telling him to save the heart of Metro Nui using the artifact. Snapping back to reality, Vakama says this is all his fault and gives a Darth Vader "No!" Vakama returns to his workshop and realizes the artifact is a red crystal wrapped with a map to somewhere. This is when Turaga Duma shows up, played by Gerard Blunkett. He's like the president of Metro Nui and says Vakama shouldn't blame himself for Lee Khan being captured. He's not a Toa. Duma is here because of the Mask of Time, which is what Vakama was working on earlier. Vakama says it's been difficult to craft because he can't get great discs without a Toa. Duma still tells him to bring it to the Colosseum in time for the Great Contest. After Duma leaves, Vakama follows the map to the Great Temple, where he bumps into the other Matoran Lee Khan visited, carrying crystals like Vakama. They go over to this panel thing which starts summoning a hologram and they insert the crystals. It's a message from Lee Khan who tells them to protect Metro Nui. Lightning spews out of the hologram that transforms them all into Toa. They're all super psyched about becoming Toa and try out their spiffy new weapons. This is a good time to introduce everybody. We have Nokama played by Tabitha St. Germain, Matau played by Brian Drummond, Onua also played by Brian Drummond, Winua also played by Paul Dobson, and Nuju played by Trevor Duvall. They all have defined personalities which I really like. Plus, unlike the last movie, this one is all about the Toa. Sadly, as we'll see, only 3 of them get a lot of screen time, but hey, what can you do? They all ask Vakama what Lee Khan wanted them to do, and Vakama explains they have to defeat the darkness and protect the heart of Metro Nui. This is when he gets a vision of Metro Nui destroyed and the great discs getting flung at him. Yeah, the vision thing is a bit strange. We never learned why Vakama has these visions, and that's a mistake of the film. This is a chance to expand the lore of Bionicle. After explaining what he saw, Winua chimes in saying if they find some great discs, it will prove they are worthy Toa. The only one who questions this is Onua, who is a piece of work. Yeah, he has a jerky persona, and that would be fine if he had an arc, but that doesn't really happen. He just bro-fists Winua at the end. They all had out, but a bird was listening to them. We get the fun montage of the Toa getting the great discs by going on all these adventures in their homelands. At the Colosseum, Duma tells the Matoran that Lee Khan is gone, but they should rely on him and his army from now on, not the Toa. Yeah, it's pretty obvious Duma is the bad guy, especially when the bird from earlier tells him about what's happened. Our Toa enter the Colosseum and present the discs, proclaiming themselves as the new defenders, but Duma says that they need to prove themselves. Turns out the Colosseum floor can rise and fall, so that's what happens, beating the Toa to a pulp. This was set up as an impossible task to show the Matoran these Toa aren't worthy. Duma spins a narrative that these Toa attack Lee Khan and tries to trap them with the help of the Dark Hunters. Nuju, Winua, and Onua get stuck in this pit while Vakama brings down the Lee Khan statue, allowing he, Nokama, and Matau to escape. They do so by swimming in this river stream with the Dark Hunters following behind. Back with Duma, we find out who he's working with, Makuta, who wants the Mask of Time for himself. Nadiki and Kreka don't feel like chasing the Toa down, so they reverse the stream to bring them back to the Colosseum. By working together, Vakama's team manages to escape, and we see the other Toa meeting with a masked Turaga. Vakama gets another vision, but it's not that important since they are all about to fall to their deaths. They swing to a nearby tower and Matau figures out he can fly with both swords. While messing with the great discs, Vakama figures out they can be merged together before he sees Lee Khan's spirit star. Vakama says if his star is in the sky, Lee Khan is still alive, and they head out to find Lee Khan since he'll know what to do. They hitch a ride on these bug transports carrying strange storage containers. Vakama gets another vision where he sees the Matoran being loaded up inside of these containers. Back with the other Toa, the Turaga tells them if they want to get out of here, they need to master their mask powers. While riding on a transport, Nakama tells Vakama he's a Toa now, but he doesn't think so. He says he's just a freak with strange dreams and that Lee Khan made a mistake choosing him. If you haven't figured it out yet, Vakama has the big character arc of this movie, thinking he's not worthy to be a Toa. It's simple but effective. It's the sort of thing you couldn't really do in the last movie since the Toa there have been Toa for a while. They arrive at Po Metru but no one is around, which is strange because builders never leave their homes. Nidiki and Krekker arrive and they get into a fight before a herd of Bionicle rhinos wreak havoc and take out the Dark Hunters. As for the Toa, they are saved by Nakama, who uses her mask power to communicate with the rhinos. Her power is she can talk to animals, and the rhinos thought they were working with the Dark Hunters terrorizing their homes. This is a good time to mention Nakama and Matao because while they don't have character arcs, they do share a boatload of screen time with Vakama. Matao is very much comic relief as in he can't go 2 scenes without getting slapped around like one of the Three Stooges. He is really fun though, which is why I like the guy. Nakama meanwhile is unfortunately nothing, the girl in the boys club. She has a studious personality as a teacher, but other than that she doesn't have much going on for her. The rhinos mention they saw where Lee Khan was taken, so they all ride off to find him. Meanwhile, the 3 Toa in prison are doing seemingly pointless tasks, moving rocks and walking around blindfolded. They all get pretty fed up with this, but after a while Onua and Nuju both discover their mask powers. Onua can mind control people and Nuju can use telekinesis, creating an opening for them to escape. So this is a good time to mention these characters, or rather their lack of character. Say what you will about the previous film and how little it focused on the main Toa, but in the few scenes we had, we got a feel for their personalities because they each had a cool moment to shine. Here though, these 3 being locked up was a mistake. They need some cool scenes to show off their personalities. Back with Vakama's team, they are storming the fortress where Lee Khan is supposedly held, with the aid of the rhinos. The Dark Hunters arrive to run defense, but this is when Matao discovers his mask power, the ability to shapeshift into anyone. He tricks the Dark Hunters before regrouping with the others to storm the fortress. We meet back up with Duma where we learn it hasn't been Duma, rather than Makuta using his mask, which makes the previous scene weird because he was talking to himself. I mean, I guess he does do that a lot. In the Dark Tunnel, Onua discovers his mask power and I have to defend it real quick. Because it's a big misconception that Onua's power is just a flashlight, but that's not true. His power is that he has enhanced vision. As we see later, he can use his eyes like a telescope, and he has X-ray vision. So it's pretty cool. I would like X-ray vision. Anyways, they walk for a bit before they run into Vakama's team, and yeah, it was pretty obvious. The Turaga is Lee Khan. He gave his power to the other Toa and explains the heart of Metro Nui is the Matoran, which fills Vakama with despair. Vakama says he failed his mission and he'll never be a real Toa. He finds a random storage container and sees it's the real Turaga Duma, cueing them in on what's been going on. They get chased by the Makuta's forces, but Vakama has a plan. They take one of the bug transports and use Onua's drill to make an escape tunnel and get to the surface. On the surface, Matao flirts with Nakama. What? Okay, there has been nothing to say that they're all related, but they call each other brother and sisters, so it's a little weird, Matao. We also get this bro moment between Onua and Onua, which would have had more weight if we developed the relationship a bit more. The Toa arrive at the Colosseum, but fake Duma says they are too late. He already collected all of the Matoran. He takes off his mask to reveal he's Makuta, and he's going to protect the Matoran as their great new leader. Makuta rides to the top of his super menacing tower and casts a stormy shadow onto Metro Nui. This is when Onua shows off his X-ray vision, so there, are you happy? It's not just a flashlight. They go below to get to the Matoran as Makuta creates a big storm for himself. They can't take all of the Matoran now, but they take as many as they can. We also find out what Makuta is doing. He's using this super creepy red hand made out of smoke to grab his minions. He grabs his bird first before grabbing the Dark Hunters, using their bodies to construct one for himself. While transporting the Matoran on water, Vakama has finished the Mask of Time and realizes this is what Makuta wanted this whole time. He's here to collect now as Makuta flies over in all his glory, now with cool wings. Makuta brings up these water towers to stop them, but the Toa work together to avoid them. Nuju floats Vakama up to the Makuta as he tips the transport over. Vakama shows off the Mask of Time and Makuta tries to sway him over to the dark side, but Vakama finally accepts his duty as a Toa. He equips the mask, but even with it, Makuta is too strong. He's about to absorb Vakama, but Lee Khan rushes in to defend him, sacrificing himself. The Mask of Time falls, which is why Makuta leaves to give them a moment. Lee Khan says that Vakama's duty is not over yet, and that he's proud to call Vakama his brother. He gives his brother his golden mask before passing on. It's a very emotional moment, all things considered. This is the first real death in Bionicle. Yeah, Takanuva and Jala died in the last film, but they were resurrected so fast it was pointless. This has real weight to it. Lee Khan is basically Vakama's hero and friend, sacrificing himself so Vakama can become the Toa he was always meant to be. Vakama discovers his mask power in this moment, invisibility, and he uses it to shoot the Mask of Time out of Makuta's hands and into the water. Now this is the moment where we learn why Makuta wanted the Mask of Time, right? He says just cryptically, without the Mask of Time it will take a lifetime to find their destinies. Maybe the Mask of Time speeds up or slows down time so Makuta can take control faster? I don't really know, it's never explained. I don't even know why the Mask of Time was a thing to begin with if they were never going to expand upon it. Again, they get into a fight, but it's just Vakama sneaking around with his invisibility, tricking the Makuta into hurting himself. Okay, while the lack of fights is bad, I do appreciate the team coming up with creative ways to get around the strict limitations. Vakama reveals himself, but it's another trick as Makuta accidentally grabs a stone pillar and crushes himself against a wall. He's not defeated, however, but as soon as the other Toa arrive, they all unite their powers and seal the Makuta into this crystal prison thing. After that, 6 spirit stars enter the sky. It's the Great Spirit Matanui telling them they are worthy of being Toa. All hail Matanui. In the epilogue, the Toa take the Matoran to the island of Matanui. Vakama says Lee Khan sacrificed his power for them, so they must sacrifice their power to free the Matoran. Vakama touches several capsules, which turns him into a Turaga. The rest do the same, becoming the Turaga from the last movie and freeing the Matoran. After giving the island its name, we get a cameo from Takua and Jala, as Vakama gives Jala Lee Khan's golden mask. That brings the movie to an end, but you might be thinking the same thing as me. Despite the whole movie being about them trying to prove their worth and become true Toa, at the end they just give it all up. And unlike the Toa from the last movie, these guys were Toa for like a week. Now in the books this makes more sense. They had a bunch more adventures, and as we'll see in the next movie, it features them exclusively. But for this standalone movie, it's a bit odd. That's the end of the film, but how does it rank? Characterization, I'm giving a 4. The characters are handled very well, except the 3 Toa being held in that cage the whole time. But Vakama's journey is very well handled. The story is a 5. It's a nice story, you know, it's well worth your time. Entertainment gets a 5. I think this is a super fun film. Not only are the visuals great, but the Bionicle charm is on full display for us to enjoy. It's hard not to get invested. Importance, I'm giving a 3. I mean, you technically don't need to watch this since it's a prequel, but then again, there's no proper sequel to the first movie, so that point is moot. Still, it's one of the 4 Bionicle movies and well worth your watch. Despite my minor critiques, I felt like this film was an improvement over the last one. Yeah, the characterization still needs work, but the story was way more interesting, the action is better, and the visuals have gone up several notches. The film is worth it just to see the background art, and we're not done with these Toa yet. As we have one more film featuring them, we'll check it out next time. The 3rd Bionicle movie is the best out of the original trilogy. The previous 2 Bionicle movies we looked at were good. Very good. There's just a charm to the series that is hard to explain. You just have to watch it to understand what I mean. So much care was put into the creative of these stories, and these existed just to sell toys. The 3rd movie continues on with the charm as we venture into what fans consider the best Bionicle movie, Bionicle 3: Web of Shadows. The film had a bunch of nods to horror, which made it stand out when compared to its more lighthearted siblings. The monster theme is very strong in this one. Both the heroes and villains were monstrous and dealt with those themes. And we're back again with the Metro Nui Toa from the last movie. So the timeline of this is a bit screwy, because this one takes place between the Metro Nui team moving the Matoran and the ending of the second movie. So the proper watch order for all these films is almost all of the second film, this film, the last 10 minutes of the second film, then the first film, then the 4th film. Yeah, it's easy to understand. I don't care that much though. I'm happy we're getting more time with these guys since I really enjoyed their characters in the last movie. So how does this film hold up? Let's find out. I'm Rocko from Reamlore, and let's dive in. By the way, if you enjoyed this video, make sure to like and subscribe because we upload videos just like this one on our Reamlore channel. We open this film back with Makuta, still trapped in a crystal before we get Turaga Vakama's narration, a tradition at this point. He tells us about the last movie and that the Metro Nui team went on one more big adventure before becoming Turaga. Their final mission is to rescue the Matoran, but Makuta put one countermeasure up to stop them. Our story truly starts with our Toa at sea until they capsize and crash. They pull themselves out of the wreckage on shore. They walk around and notice giant green web everywhere and monsters hidden in the shadows. What Nua realizes that the archives were broken into, releasing every monster in recorded history. The webs belong to Visorak, dangerous monsters, but Vakama is confident since they defeated the Makuta. They get instantly taken down, however, as the Visorak blast the Toa, paralyzing them. The Toa are taken prisoner as we meet who the Visorak are working for, Sidorak, played by Paul Dobson. He's a really fun antagonist, and with his partner we'll get the best villains in this series other than the Makuta. As we'll soon see he's kinda like the Mr. Satan of Bionicle, as in he tries to look tough for everyone, but he's a total coward in a real fight. Sidorak has taken the Matoran as his property and sees that the Visorak have webbed up the Toa outside of his balcony. Sidorak orders for them to be dropped, but this is when we meet his better half, Rudaka, played by Kathleen Barr. Rudaka is a fan favorite character to say the least, and she is still great all these years later. She's a snake, but in the best way possible. I know it's a stereotype, but it's a fun one. And she's even better when she's interacting with Sidorak, because clearly Rudaka has her fangs in Sidorak and is just manipulating him to do what she wants. I would honestly watch a whole movie just about these two. Rudaka stops Sidorak, saying that vanquishing the Toa should be something special, not as simple as tossing out the trash. Vakama tells the others he tried to lead the Toa as best as he could, and he wishes he could change, which is when he starts changing. His arm transforms into this flamethrower thing, and the others change with him. Yeah, they were injected with poison, which has now transformed them, breaking them out of their cocoons and falling down. They aren't dead yet though, as 6 people fly in and save them. Later, Matau walks around looking for the others when he sees its reflection in the water. He has a more monstrous form, and it freaks him out when the others show up. When the toys came out, the monster thing was a big tagline, but the toys never looked like monsters, they just looked really cool. Here though, it's all in how they move. They move with their arms on the ground, they have hunchbacks, and they fight in more savage ways. Matau yells at Vakama saying this is all his fault, and I should note that Matau has been really getting on Vakama's case as a leader since this movie started. It doesn't really make sense. Yes, this ties into their story with Matau criticizing Vakama's leadership and learning to love his bro, but in the last movie, Matau and Vakama got along fine. In fact, Matau respected Vakama while everyone else thought he was a bit nuts with all the visions. Why give this character arc to Matau? Why not Onua? In the last movie, he openly did not care for Vakama and thought he was nuts more than the rest of the Toa. Why not make the story between them, especially since Onua did very little in the last movie? Actually, since we're talking about character arcs, they're even weaker than the last movie. I thought they did okay balancing the characters. Yes, the 3 in prison got the shaft, but everyone else was solid. Here, Vakama and Matau are the only ones with development. Everyone else is barely worth mentioning in this story. The last movie, I gave it a pass since we still got a story and focused on the 3 Toa, but there is no excuse this time, they screwed up. Meanwhile, with Rudaka, we learn that she serves Makuta and learn what her plan is. She wants to find the bodies of the Toa and drain them of their powers to destroy Makuta's prison. After that, Rudaka is going to get rid of Sidorak and teach the Matoran to obey her. A little snag in the plan though, as the Toa were rescued by the Rahaga. We meet the leader of the Rahaga, and the only one worth mentioning, Norik, played by French Tickner. His character arc along with the other Rahaga are non-existent because if they can't even give character arcs to all of the Toa, 6 more people is impossible. Norik himself gets the most screen time, but he doesn't have a character. He's glorified exposition, telling the Toa where they need to go and what they need to do. It's the same role Vakama filled in the first film, but Vakama always had this caring presence about him, bestowing wisdom and guidance because he cared about the Toa and Matoran. Here, Norik is giving wisdom because we need someone to tell the Toa what to do. Norik tells them about Kitangu, an ancient being skilled with venom, so if they want to be Toa, they have to find him. He says that Hordika venom has corrupted them, and if it's not neutralized, this change will be permanent. He says they've been searching for Kitangu for a while, noting he may not exist, but he believes. Vakama says they shouldn't waste time with a fairy tale and instead rescue the Matoran. He walks off after Norik says he doesn't have control over his powers, and Norik then says he'll talk with him. Dude, you talking to him made him upset in the first place. Vakama vents about how if the other Toa think it's so easy to be in charge, they can try it, but Norik says they won't succeed without each other. Vakama thinks otherwise and runs off, saying he can do this by himself. He returns to their fortress where he encounters some Visorak and is taken prisoner. Rudaka rolls up and explains Vakama is turning into something new. She frees Vakama because she wants to talk about her situation with Sidorak. She says Vakama should treat the other Toa with fear and intimidation, that way they'll treat him with respect. The Visorak feel how weak their king is getting, and that something has to change. Rudaka shows Vakama his home of Tom Metru and says that he can lead the Visorak horde and take his home back. This is a great scene and handled super well. While Matau's arc is botched because it feels out of character, Vakama's temporary run to the dark side is handled very well. After finally becoming the Toa he thought he wasn't worthy to be, he got the biggest win ever taking down the Makuta, only to screw it up big time. With monstrous blood tempting him, he is more easily manipulated by Rudaka to see that maybe the Toa wouldn't have failed if Vakama led with intimidation, not respect. I was really curious what they were going to do with Vakama after his main story wrapped up, but this is a surprisingly good direction to go in. Meanwhile, with the Toa and the Rahaga, they arrive at the Great Temple to search for Kitangu. The other Toa say the temple is sacred and they don't feel comfortable going in their new state, so the Rahaga go off on their own. They search through the temple and get the message follow the tears that reach the sky. While inside of the temple, however, they are stalked by a monster in the shadows, and it's Vakama going full Darth Vader. Norik pleads with Vakama not to do this, but Vakama has turned into a universal movie monster and jump scares Norik. The other Toa go to the Great Temple the next morning to find it burning and destroyed. They go inside and can't find the Rahaga anywhere aside from Norik, who is trapped under some rubble. Norik tells the others about Vakama, explaining that Hordika venom has taken over and the rest will soon follow if they don't find Kitangu. It's in this moment where Matau regrets his actions and says there has to be some way to save Vakama. They figure out the tears that reach the sky are referring to a waterfall, and they follow the nearby stream. Vakama goes to see Sidorak and asks to join, presenting the 5 Rahaga as tribute. Vakama hangs the Rahaga out to dry as he meets up with Rudaka and Sidorak. Rudaka gives Sidorak Vakama as a gift to run the Horde, along with the other Toa who will be trained like Vakama. Sidorak and Vakama walk and talk past the Matoran, the king showing his new soldier the huge Vizorak horde he will command. The Toa meanwhile follow the river in a montage until they reach Kometru, where they find the origin of the waterfall that climbs a mountain. They finally find Kitangu, a massive mech guy voiced by Scott McNeil. This guy is just bizarre. He talks like he sang a 12-hour AC/DC karaoke concert, and to be honest, he doesn't add anything to the story. He doesn't have a notable character, only 2 cool moments in the film, and he doesn't live up to the awesome hype. I think Kitangu would have worked better if he was more comedic, like Guru from DBZA, but his character doesn't hurt the story that much. The Toa explain their situation, but Kitangu won't cure them, saying that they need to fight the Sidorak with their new powerful abilities. As Matau puts it, they came all this way just to find out they didn't need to come all this way. And for once in this film, I agree with Matau. This is the typical "the treasure was friendship all along" type of nonsense, which is a bit ridiculous since so much is on the line here. And I think Norik has just lost his mind, because this whole time he's been telling the Toa, you need to get rid of this Hordika blood. But now he's like, don't you guys feel stupid? You need that power, aren't I smart? Plus, what was with all that nonsense about the Hordika venom making them go insane? It makes the last 20 minutes of the film feel like filler, and we shouldn't have filler in a 70-minute film, especially when we have 6 characters to focus on. Kitangu says that even though they need to rely on these new powers, their story has motivated him and he wants to help in their fight. The Toa breach the entrance to the bad guy's fortress ready to fight the whole Vizorak horde. They use their cannons just like jetpacks to get to higher ground, Matau flying up more as the others fight. While the bad guys are trying to escape with the elevator, Kitangu is climbing the tower to get them. Rudaka tricks Sidorak into fighting Kitangu, both leaving Vakama to be attacked by Matau. They get into a fight with Matau trying to reason with him, and honestly, this movie has the best fight scenes out of the original trilogy. Yeah, there are no punches being thrown, but they're blasting monsters and slashing them with their weapons. It's pretty cool. Sidorak tries to blast Kitangu, but he's a worse shot than me and keeps missing. Rudaka doesn't have terrible aim, however, and nails Kitangu, blasting the ancient being to the ground. Rudaka leads Sidorak to check on Kitangu, who is still alive, and she tells Sidorak to do it. Sidorak pleads with her because he can't defeat the guy by himself, and Rudaka is fully aware of that. While trembling like the coward he is, Kitangu rose up behind Sidorak and crushed him into oblivion. The other Toa, meanwhile, are up to their necks in Vizorak, trying to fend them off, but fortunately they get reinforcements in the form of the Rahaga, who Norik freed to assist. Back with Matau and Vakama, they have probably the best fight in the original trilogy, being pretty epic as Vakama almost kills Matau. Matau hangs over the edge and apologizes to Vakama for doubting him, that their strength comes from their unity. Leadership is not an easy job, but Vakama is their leader. It's their job to rescue the Matoran, and Vakama knows what to do. Matau falls over the edge, but Vakama swings by with the web to save him and reach the ground safely. The Toa fighting on the ground are surrounded until they see Rudaka roll up with her giant Vizorak. She explains what she wants as Vakama brings Matau over, but it's a trick as the 5 Toa blaster. It has no effect, however, as Rudaka explains, divided, they don't stand a chance. This is when Vakama shows Rudaka that he's back on the side of good. She tries to manipulate him one more time, stating that even if he kills her, the Vizorak will tear them apart, but he points out the Horde listens to him because of Sidorak. Vakama tells the entire Horde to leave, and they do so. Vakama explains that the reason they are leaving is because you can't be loyal to someone you're enslaved to, and he leads only those who choose to follow. Vakama blasts Rudaka and finally kills her, but that's what she wanted, because the crystal on her chest was connected directly to Makuta's prison, and by adding all of their elemental powers to it, they just freed Makuta. The Dark Makuta hand appears and drags Rudaka's body away, leaving the crystal behind. Vakama figures out what happened, but mentions Makuta doesn't scare him anymore. Kitangu joins them, and Vakama asks him to change them back into Toa. Even though they are stronger like this, it's their duty to be Toa for the Matoran. Kitangu uses his powers to change them back into Toa and help helps them load up the Matoran on their transport ships. Vakama thanks Norik for all his help, and Norik tells Vakama he has done a good job keeping everyone safe. The Toa fly the ships with all the Matoran to their new island paradise of Matanui and pass by Makuta's prison, seeing that he's really gone. Vakama says they will defeat Makuta next time he shows up, and we finally cut to the future. Vakama is now a Turaga, telling Takanuva, Jala, and Holly the story, and the movie ends with him telling us the 3 virtues. That's the way of the Bionicle. That's the end of the 3rd Bionicle movie, but how does it rank? Characterization gets a 3. I mean, the character work in this movie was really weak. Vakama and the bad guys are handled very well, but Matau shouldn't have gone in that direction, and the other characters don't really do anything. The story gets a 4. It's a good storyline. It's not the best with the Kitangu nonsense, but the story of the Toa transforming into monsters is cool. Entertainment gets a 5. This is incredibly fun to watch, especially since I really like monster movies. If there was a Bionicle movie I would rewatch over and over, it was this one. Importance gets a 4. I'd say it's pretty important you watch this one as the conclusion of the Metro Nui saga, and it's the 3rd movie. It's kind of a must-watch. What do I think now that this movie is done? I think this may have been the best movie in the entire trilogy. It has the best storylines, the best villains, and the story arc for the main leads are great. Now, for a while this looked like the last Bionicle movie until we had one more not made by Miramax. Bionicle: The Legend Reborn, which we'll look at another time. We've made it to the last Bionicle movie, Bionicle: The Legend Reborn from 2009. This is a standalone film and a sequel to the original trilogy of movies. This is featuring the characters from a later line of Bionicle sets called the Glotorian line, meaning we missed 2 sets that featured the direct sequels to the Mask of Light. There were plans to make this another trilogy of films that would also be the epic conclusion to the Bionicle storyline, featuring all of the previous Toa from Mask of Light to this movie, uniting to finish off the Makuta once and for all, according to Greg Farshley. But unfortunately that didn't happen, which is a total bummer. The only snippets we got were an online comic, which I never got the chance to read. The Bionicle Toyline didn't stop here though. They would be revived with the Hero Factory line of toys, featuring a bunch of animations around those heroes. Now as for the fans, every video I see on YouTube and every comment on this movie says that it's the absolute worst of the Bionicle movies, that this is the one that killed the Bionicle movie franchise, and I have to strongly disagree. This movie is not the reason the Bionicle line stopped. It stopped because Lego canceled the toy line and decided to go in a new direction. But the question still remains, how does this movie hold up? Well, let's find out. I'm Rocko from Reamlore, and let's dive in. By the way, if you enjoyed this video, make sure to like and subscribe because we upload videos just like this one on our Reamlore channel. We upload a great new video every Tuesday, Thursday, and Friday, so be sure to subscribe and hit that bell so you don't miss any of our uploads. We open with dramatic narration. Good. I thought I would have to burn someone's house down if a Bionicle film didn't open with dramatic narration. Turns out this dramatic narration is from Matanui himself, who destroys the island of Matanui from the first movie to stand up, showing he was a towering giant, a god. All praise Matanui, our vengeful god. Matanui is played by Michael Dorn, most famous for his roles on Star Trek. Spoilers as well, this movie is filled with top-tier talent. Turns out inside of Giant Robot God were his citizens living peaceful lives until an ever-present evil stripped his power away and enslaved his people. They don't say his name, but this was Makuta doing all of this to try and keep him asleep, I guess. While we don't see Makuta here in any capacity, there was a Makuta model designed for this, but it was made to test animation, nothing more. It seemed like our robot god was done for until part of him separated from the body, carrying his mind with it, the golden mask of life. It not only left the robot, it left the freaking planet and crash landed on a brand new one. By the way, you might be clamoring to your screens during this whole opening asking, what? Just as I did for many years. Because as I said, they skipped over some Bionicle storylines between Mask of Light and this movie. This is just a rough estimation, I'm not that well versed in the lore, but basically after they woke up Matanui, Takanuva and a bunch of other Matoran went back to live to Metro Nui, while the other Toa stayed behind. Tahu's team got captured and a new team of Toa, including Jala from the first movie, worked together to save their Toa and find Matanui's Mask of Life, which housed his soul. After that, they all went on this big adventure to find the mask, ending with said mask reunited with Matanui's giant body. And as far as we know, the 2 or 3 Toa teams are trapped within that giant body right now. Yeah, sorry if I missed things. As I said, I'm not super well versed in Bionicle lore. The storyline is all over the place with books, comics, video games, and movies depicting the stories. It's hard to keep the story straight when the medium keeps shifting like this. Inside of the giant crater, the Mask of Life, which literally has Matanui on it, creates a new body for itself. And he looks really good. Unlike the first 3 films which were made by Miramax, this one was made by Tinseltown Toons, which would go on to make the Hero Factory films. And they are very talented. This film adapted the Bionicle designs the best, actually looking like the toys with the robotic design instead of drastically changing the models to make them more organic, which never felt right to me. They're intelligent machines, they should look like robots, like the Transformers. Matanui gets used to walking with his new body and almost steps on this adorable bug, but stops himself. The bug crawls up to the mask, and when he touches it, the bug transformed into a shield, which is handy because a scorpion monster shows up and attacks Matanui. Matanui struggles as he just got this new body, but thanks to the bug shield, he was able to stop them. Matanui picks up its severed tail before a car rolls up. Matanui asks him where the nearest city is, and the guy in the car jokes that the nearest city is about 6 feet underground. The guy in the car offers to drive him to the nearest civilization because Matanui does not want to wander around with bone hunters and Skrull active around this site. The guy explains the bug is a Scarabax before the two ride off. He also introduces himself as Metis, played by David Leisure. Matanui asks him what happened here because there are destroyed ruins everywhere, and Metis says nobody knows. Metis explains he's an Agori, peaceful villagers trying to survive, and Matanui is a Glotorian, a warrior. They arrive at Barra Magna just in time for the big match. Metis says that the leaders of the villages picked their best fighters, the Glotorian, against one another to settle a dispute, and for entertainment. Yes! Pro wrestling in Bionicle! Let's go! Metis introduces Matanui to Ranu, played by Aaron Shinnerman, the leader of the village. He is upset that his Glotorian, Akar, is phoning this in, saying that this is a bad sign. He explains that if a Glotorian loses, they have to be banished. What? Why? If they lose a match, isn't it easier to train them so they win next time instead of replace them? Akar, a fire Glotorian on the ground, is fighting Strack, an ice Glotorian. Akar is played by Jim Cummings, a legendary voice actor with hundreds of voice roles, notably a bunch of characters from Winnie the Pooh and Mickey Mouse. Strack, meanwhile, is played by Jeff Bennett, who is an amazing voice actor voicing thousands of characters like Johnny Bravo, for example. The fight is pretty cool, and Matanui is impressed with how courageously Akar fights. Akar wins the battle and demands Strack's surrender. Strack does so, but it's a trick to attack Akar from behind. Matanui is furious, but the Agori say they're powerless against a Glotorian. This is when Matanui jumps in to help. Strack, however, is an experienced fighter, while Matanui learned how to walk like an hour ago, so it doesn't go well. That is until his mask transformed the scorpion tail he had gotten into a big sword. He disarms Strack and forces him to vocally surrender. Akar tries to give Matanui the shield, but Matanui says Akar fought with honor and the shield is his. Akar is more concerned that people are seeing him as irrelevant as he gets older. Later, Matanui sees how many shields Akar won, but Akar doesn't care, saying he should have packed it in a long time ago. He stayed because of duty and pride, but now that he's past his prime, he's no use to anyone. Matanui says it wasn't pointless. He fought for his people like a true Toa, but Akar doesn't recognize that name. This was kind of a soft reboot of the series, as in a Bionicle character is on a planet that doesn't have any recognizable elements. No Makuta, no Toa, nothing. Similar elements, but a brand new environment. I said a soft reboot, not an actual reboot, because a soft one is like, yeah, all that stuff in the past did happen, but we're gonna ignore it for now and act like we're starting fresh. I always prefer stuff that stays with the continuity because I want things to continue, and I don't get too upset at a soft reboot, because new fans need to jump on somewhere. Metis rolls in and tries to recruit Matanui to be a Glotorian for a village, because that's what his job is, but Matanui refuses. Akar asks what Matanui wants, and he explains he wants to go back to his homeworld off the planet. Matanui explains a powerful evil enslaved his people, and why can't he just say it's the Makuta? We all know it's him. Just then, another Glotorian enters the chamber and is super happy about the proof she has been searching for. She introduces herself as Kina, who has been saying there are other worlds out there her whole life. Kina is played by Marla Sokolov, famous for her role on Full House. I think Kina is actually the best female character in Bionicle, aside from Rudaka, of course. While I had no problem with Gali or Nokama, they always felt like the girl in the boys club. They didn't have enough time to develop their personalities. Kina is an over-energetic thrill seeker who wants to escape this awful world. She's fleshed out, which makes her more memorable when you compare her to the other girls we've seen. Akar says they can trust her as Kina gives the bug on Matanui's shoulder a name, Click. Kina says that with Matanui's help they can find a better world, and Matanui says if he can, he will bring her along. Kina explains that there is a place in her village filled with old technology that could help them. I also want to say that all of the Bionicle movies have great backgrounds. In the first movie, it was an island paradise. In the second movie, it was a massive city. In the third movie, it was more of a dark maze. And in this movie, it's like a barren wasteland. It's nice that they change up the landscape each film to make them stand out. They ride off in the morning, but someone tells the Bone Hunters where they are heading. On the car ride, Akar mentions that the Skrull and Bone Hunters are becoming more bold, seemingly knowing their every move. Matanui proposes that if an enemy knows too much, that can only mean one thing: someone is a traitor. They can't think about it right now though, as a monster called Scorpio shows up to fight them along with the Bone Hunters. Kina tries to race around the monster, but he's too fast. Good time to mention, the fights in this movie are really good. Instead of just firing energy blasts at each other, they're actually fighting and swinging their weapons around. No more beam struggles or look over here or goalie matches, just people swinging hunks of metal around at each other. It took 4 movies, but we finally got here. Matanui outsmarts the Scorpio monster and slides down the mountain, meeting up with Akar and Kina after trapping the monster. They get to Kina's village, but it's been destroyed, upsetting Matanui and probably bringing up bad memories for him. Kina thinks that she should have been here and worries about a Glatorian rookie, Gresh, learning from her. Gresh, played by Mark Famagetti, stumbles by Hurt, who explains the Skrull and Bone Hunters were working together. Akar says that's impossible since they're rival tribes, but Gresh is positive and he's proven right. The leader of the Skrulls, Tuma, is there leading a bunch of Bone Hunters. They get to the secret cavern where Matanui recognizes the walls of the place. They lay Gresh down, but they find Barracks hiding there. Barracks is a thief who has been running around taking whatever he wants and acts like a weasel. Barracks is played by James Arnold Taylor, who has voiced a ton of characters in cartoons, most famously Obi-Wan Kenobi from the Clone Wars show. Kina doesn't like him, saying he's a thief, but Barracks says he's a collector and likes fixing things. They have him work on fixing Gresh, but Kina thinks he's the traitor. Yeah, sure. Matanui thinks from the temple the great beings were here, but Kina says they're more like great destroyers. This place looked like the island of Matanui before they left. Matanui says the great beings weren't responsible for this before he notices a nearby door with the symbol of the Bionicle. He opens the door, which leads to an underground bunker filled with Bionicle text. Bionicles have their own language. Because of course they do. Matanui figures this used to be a laboratory when he sees a blueprint of his former body, the one now enslaving his people. They go outside where they list off their problems and realize they're pretty screwed. Worse so because Matanui says he can't waste time here and needs to save his people. Akar stops him though, saying he's not ready to fight yet, and he will train Matanui if he stays. Akar thinks that Matanui might be able to upgrade their weapons just like with Click. Matanui tries it out and it works, upgrading all of their weapons with elemental powers related to their personalities. Akar thanks him, calling them a friend, which is something Matanui has never been called before. On their way back to warn the villages, they test out their new elemental powers, but Akar says they all need some more training without relying on their weapons. He also shows that it's important to learn an opponent's weakness and use it against them, and to read their moves before they happen. They arrive at a twin village where a Glatorian battle is about to start. Vastus, also played by James Arnold Taylor, is battling Terex, who is also played by Jeff Bennett. Akar stops the fight and tells everyone the Bone Hunters and Skrull have formed an alliance. To counter them, they need to form an alliance as well. Everyone starts to panic and say they can't win when Akar shoots fire into the sky to get their attention and explains Matanui can build up their arsenal. Matanui demonstrates this by upgrading Terex's weapon, and everyone is convinced, including the village elders. They agree to unite if the Glatorians and Matanui swear to protect them. Akar says the Glatorian will help and asks as a friend that Matanui stay, which he does, and everyone unites. Later at this glowing labyrinth, Kina follows Barracks into this place and confronts him as the traitor, but he says he was just following a man in shadows, who captures the two. Metis and Ranu say they saw the Bone Hunters carrying them away. The Glatorian want to rescue them, but the Agori point out this is what the bad guys want, to lead them away and wipe out their villages. Matanui says no one is worth sacrificing, so he offers to go after them alone as the Glatorian protect the villagers. On his way there, Matanui talks to Akar, who gives him a map to the Skrull camp while the Agori are pulling some big statue around, basically to link the villages together. At the Skrull camp, Kina says that Barracks should have stayed out of her cavern, but Barracks says it doesn't belong to her, she stole it. Kina says it meant a lot to her because it was her special place away from the torment, and they bond over the fact that Barracks wants something more from this world as well. Matanui then arrives to fight the Skrull leader, Tuma. Tuma is played by Fred Tatasciore, who is known for voicing the Hulk in those Disney Marvel cartoons. Matanui challenges Tuma to a match for the freedom of his friends, and he accepts after Matanui calls him a chicken. They fight, but Tuma is way stronger than Matanui. Thankfully, our robot god figures out Tuma's back is a weak spot. Just like Akar taught him, Matanui takes advantage of this and strikes Tuma's back, which hurts him. Eventually, Matanui lands one big strike on Tuma and knocks him out, claiming his shield and his friends. That is until he is greeted by a menacing slow clap as Metis shows up, revealing he was the traitor. Metis explains he convinced the bad guys to unite and take out the tribes because, let's face it, life on this planet isn't peachy. This way he can live a luxurious life ruling both tribes. And as Metis explains, nobody knows except the people here, and he orders his forces to kill the Glatorian. Before that could happen, Click snuck away to gather all of his friends and form a giant monster, which was actually one of the 2 Bionicles from the set that didn't make the movie. Matanui frees Kina and Barracks as Click's monster form disappears. The Glatorians and Agori then show up to join the battle as well, and something I realized while watching this, they never hit the tagline, unity, duty, destiny, even though they had many opportunities to do that. Matanui chases after Metis and grabs the traitor before using his mass powers to transform Metis into what he really is, a snake, leaving him there to rot. Motunui joins up with the other Glotorian and they unite their Toa powers to take out the bad guys, forcing all of them to scatter and retreat. After the battle, all of the villages pull their parts together to form a united village led by a car, and after they push their villages together, it reveals another giant robot like the one in the opening. Motunui says this is an empty shell, the former guardian of his people. Barracks then shows off a coin he found in the lab which depicts the giant, as well as a map on not only the coin, but the scroll's shield. Motunui thanks his new friends for their help, and they all agree to find their way back to Motunui's world and save his people. Their quest is just beginning. Yeah, about that. The movie ends with the most awesome 2000s rock song possible, Ride by Presence. That's the end of the final Bionicle movie, but how does it rank? Characterization, I'm giving a 5. Everyone is really strong in this movie. Usually in Bionicle films, they don't have enough time to give everyone a chance to shine, but that is not true in this. The story, I'm also giving a 5. The story is solid from start to finish. Motunui's quest to find his inner warrior and save others is handled very well. Entertainment, I'm giving a 5. It is very entertaining. The fights, as I said, are fantastic, and I normally hate the Mad Max spoofs, but this one was unique and interesting. Importance, I'm giving a 3. It's not vital you see this. Yes, it is the final Bionicle film, but it's not connected that much to the original trilogy, and it teases a sequel that never happens. So after all that, do I think this is the worst Bionicle film? No! Do I think there are any bad Bionicle films? No! They're all really good. Flawed, but good. Is this the film that killed the franchise? Absolutely not. It was cancelled because Lego wanted to go in a new direction for these toys. The quality of the film had nothing to do with that. This movie is just as good as the previous films. Fun characters, good action, and an engaging story. Even though the traitor thing was pretty obvious after a while, the story was cool and the cast is so talented I just didn't care. It's just disappointing this was the last Bionicle movie and it ends with the cliffhanger, saying the story will continue when it won't. As I said, it got a follow-up webcomic, but come on. To sum it up for you all as best as I can, after this, Motunui, the Glotorian, and the former Toa teams all work together to fight the Makuta, who's taking over Motunui's body. Motunui possesses that fallen giant robot body we just met to help out, and they would beat Makuta once and for all. Yeah, there was a lot more that happened in between, but those were the cliff notes. I can't say for sure because I never got the chance to read the comic. It was taken down for a bit and I can't find it online. Looking back on all these films, I think Bionicle would have done better if it was a TV show instead of a series of movies. The series just works better if they have more time to build their world and develop their characters. Yeah, it would be on a cheaper budget, but Ninjago looked pretty good on a cheaper budget for its time. You could have it be like Power Rangers, where every season or every 2 seasons we get a new Toa line, that way we could rotate the cast and characters. And maybe bring back old characters for specials and for finales, maybe even uniting them all together for the big finale. Unfortunately, Bionicle ended here. There was an attempt to revive the line, but we don't talk about that. I feel like the legacy will live on, however, as myself and many other people still hold this series close to their hearts. Thank you all so much for watching. If you enjoyed, make sure to like and subscribe if you enjoyed, and I'll see you all later.